Hey traders, this is Christian from Hertz Tribeca Trade Group, and this is your recap for Tuesday, July 9th. It's funny because you look at the S&P today up 14 basis points, and you're probably, just looking at what happened there and the overall index, and you're probably like, wow, it was probably a pretty quiet day, but a very big separation in sectors today. A lot, just like it kind of felt that way yesterday. A lot of momentum names, a lot of growth names, really performing well. But I love these days when the S&P is just barely up on the day, closes higher from where it opened this morning, which was lower. So you got a nice little range bound day today. But the action I don't think was really in the majority of S&P names. So let's go. Let's take a closer look, and we'll just examine here. But let me go to my spreadsheet. And again, I always look at things from low from the open to today was low to high, but from the open to the close, and it was really the Qs. So the Qs finished up, again, not that much, only a 0.5% on the day, but we got to remember that everything opened in the red this morning. So Qs had a nice move throughout the day. Or I'll increase the font on here so you can see. But up 1% was the S&P from where we opened. Small caps actually did pretty well too. Again, you look at the performance change in column AA, and it was only up 10 basis points. But I'll tell you, you really get an opportunity. And to be honest, I don't think we see that many of these days. I think the majority of the days that we're seeing, and probably 3 out of 5 days right now, we're either seeing a strong open and names kind of just fizzle throughout the day, still finishing up, and then we're also seeing choppy markets. But I think it's we're not getting very many days where we see all green from the open. So real nice performance. XBI, which was the best performer on the day in terms of groups. I think that's right. Let me just double check that. That and junior gold miners, but yeah, up 1.4% today. This was my trade that I went home with yesterday. So I put that on the private Twitter feed and how to execute that if you're looking for an overnight trade. So mission accomplished there. XBI I thought was oversold in the short term. I think we went over to, which I'm not going to do now. But I talked about a couple levels that were taken out to the downside, right? Virgin point of controls. Those are really good for looking for reversals. So, I took that trade off in the first 15 minutes of the day, and it continued to rally throughout. So you could have actually, I mentioned the whole time that it would be just an overnight trade, but I think you could have hung on to it throughout the day and did pretty well. Also, the Chinese internets, these names did pretty well too. The only one that I have, I really don't have any chunky positions on with this, but you can see down here China internet names from the open. Look at Hua was up 3.6%. IQ, I don't own any of these names, just kind of noticing what's happening. BZUN, which continues to be I'm sorry, I do have SE. So this one, continues to see a lot of rolling of bullish options, call options, as well as some new positions. But I do have SE on. Let's see how this finished on the day, and I need to just continue to kind of roll up my trailing stop. Didn't finish on the highs, but I continue to kind of ratchet up my trailing stop so that I'm making sure that if it does break, but I'm following the trend in this thing in SE, and that's been performing pretty nice. But also Alibaba did pretty well today, and the one that I do own is JD.com out of this group. So these two, and both in cash in both those names. So yeah, and then the real story, which I think everybody noticed today, was the FANG stocks, right? I do have a FANG ETF for you to watch. It's Frank David Nancy. I talked a little bit about this in the quick midday video that I shoot for members. I talked about, so first of all, right? I mean, this is really really nice looking. There's no doubt about it. Amazon, I took off my trade. So what I've been doing with Amazon is I've been playing Amazon through call spreads, right? I think options are very difficult. I personally have a hard time holding on to for a long time just outright calls in Amazon. They're expensive, right? They cost a lot of money for close to the money calls. It's just not. It just doesn't fit my personality to own something like that much money. So what do? I kind of make it manageable. I either sell put spreads or buy call spreads. What I've been doing recently is buying call spreads and then rolling those call spreads. So once if I put on a trade, that's, the trade that I had on was, let's see if I can find this, but this was this week's, this week's 1952, 1962 call spread. And what I do is I buy those spreads about $15, $20 out of the money, and I usually try to leg into them around like $3, and then to try to take them off for targets, and then try to get the last one for a little bit more than a double. And then the important thing to do. Is to ride your winners, right? So obviously you can't do that with options, right? They have a definite expiration time. So what you could do is you could just keep rolling the trade. And I did that last week. I had a winner in Amazon, and I took the trade off, and I took the profits and I rolled it into a new trade. Now I tried to do that again today, and it just did not. I didn't chase, and unfortunately I could not get back into it. So I was looking here to try to get in. I was hoping that it would actually fall a little bit further, but it just didn't. And sometimes that works out. Sometimes you do have to chase a little bit, to get your trade, to get some sort of a trade on. Which, and if you played Amazon at all today, you had to be able to get into it. You had to chase it. But so what does this look like, right? To me, this looks like a beautiful cup and handle, right? And I've been talking about how the FANG stocks are, have been looking better and better. So I think the whole group. So let's just go through these really quick. But anyway, I wanted to provide a little bit of my strategy. I hope that helps for how I trade. A very high price stock, 1988 is the price right now. But you got to have a strategy that fits you and your personality. And your trading psychology, so that you can stick in the trade as it continues to go up. Facebook, I've been talking about Facebook now for a week or so, saying that this thing is now out of resistance, and this thing looks great too. So I would ride the trend. So as I mentioned, I was going to talk about a trade. The only one that I think doesn't look great is Google, and who knows, this could surprise. I just think, and I've said this before, you've probably heard me say it, I am worried about the regulatory spotlight that these names are under. All three, Facebook, Google, and Amazon. You're constantly hearing something. But I think Amazon has that catalyst of Prime Day, which is helping a lot. Netflix, this name fell off the highs because they mentioned that they're going to be losing what is it, Friends, I guess, which is a big portion of their business. So this one, I think, still you could wait. The problem is, like, if you wait for a little bit of confirmation, that you're going to have to chase a little bit, and I think there's nothing wrong with that, considering that the stock has been in a range for a long time, right? So for me, I always want to wait for a little bit of confirmation, rather than if you didn't wait for confirmation and you've been in this for months and months and months, which if you're in options, that's not going to work. So that's why I wait for confirmation with options. Again, video for information purposes only, not giving out any advice or recommendations. Just talking about what I do and how I position. So that's Netflix. And so here's my idea, right? Because then if you look at names like PayPal, right? PayPal also looks very strong. There's a little bit of calls that went up today. Again, a lot of this stuff is momentum, momentum based. Not the smartest order flow in the world, but they're noticing something is moving, and they're participating, right? That's a lot of what the call buying is. When you see something like somebody buy PayPal calls after the name's already up 1% on the day. So my idea is, and I went over this in the midday session, and I did add a little bit. Once I just didn't want to get back into Amazon at the level, so I kind of did a cutesy little trade here. So a lot of the FANG stocks, I think, tend to run into their earnings number, which we've got in another week or so. So one way that you can kind of participate is what I did, and I think this still looks pretty good. Is through this FANG ETF. I call it the FANG ETF. It's FDN. And if you look at the holdings, right, just make sure you double up. There's two Googles in here, Goog and Google. I like how I pronounce them differently there. But if you add these two up, they're a top weight. So the top names in this ETF are Amazon, Google, Facebook, Netflix, the FANG stocks, then PayPal, Salesforce, eBay, Twitter, which had a really nice day today as well. So I think this is a great way. If you're seeing all these names move up, you could definitely participate it through this ETF. And again, what's nice about this is the options are not very expensive, right? So for example, what's the for Amazon? If you went out to August, right, which is what I did here in FDN. If you look at the the money calls, so you got to go up to now 2,000 because of the move. The implied volatility is about a 26. Facebook, the implied volatility in Facebook August calls are 32. So what is it in FDN? If you look at the ETF, it's less than that. It's about 18, right? So it's a little bit easier now. Granted, it was up 1.3%, but it may not fly as much because it is in ETF when there is momentum. But still, I think it's not a bad way to play it. Of course, if you didn't want to mess with that, the only thing that's concerning there is the options are a little bit wide depending on the strike that you look at. You could have, of course, look at the Qs. All right, so that's a little bit of today's action. Other names, interesting. Some of the names that came back today for a while. XME was down like almost 2%, and this thing came back. There was interesting call buying in this thing today. So look at it come off the lows. Actually, again, this is a counter trend trade. But for whatever reason, somebody really likes this ETF. We saw a whole bunch of call buying in this a couple weeks ago, and I got out of my swing trade last week in XME for profits. And then once it went back to my cost basis, I unwound it because it did start to fall. And you could see this week, you could see it come down. So again, you got to be careful with counter trend trades because sometimes they bounce and then they go back to their downtrend, which is what's going on here. But look at the action here, July 27th. Out of the money calls. So 27.5 is not that far out of the money, by the way. But somebody went into these pretty decent size. This is 391,000 premium. This is also the weekly calls. Somebody spent 134. This was around midday today. This one was around 2 o'clock. So yeah, I mean there was definite buying the dip interest in this today in something that was the underperformer for the day. Other just to finish this example for today. Again, a lot more things in the green. Semis had a really nice day today. The gold miners are still doing pretty well, and this does not look like a bad chart. I want to go over a couple of the semi names, but GDX is trying to come out of this bull flag to the upside. So that should move a bit tomorrow on Powell. I think Powell speaks at 10 a.m. tomorrow. So, of course, if you're really worried about Powell, you could put a pretty cheap hedge on, with the VIX around 14. It's always like, what do we know, right? Well, we know with the VIX around 14, insurance right now is pretty cheap, right? So we know that with the VIX. So GDX looks pretty good. Just to mention one or two sentences here about the S&P futures. Why I haven't really done anything here, in terms of hedging or play shorts, is because we're onto new territory, and and the market is still pretty negative, right? I mean, no disrespect to anybody on CNBC Fast Money, but there wasn't one bull out of the group yesterday. After the market was just down a little bit yesterday. So, it's I still think this market is kind of in a sweet spot because there's no euphoria. Everybody hates it, even though the market is chugging higher. And this was a pretty nice setup for today. Coming back and retesting the top of value, 29.63. These are all things that we went over in the morning session. We also talked about the other things that we went over was how we went to the bottom of value on the 1 hour chart, and on the 5 minute we took out a virgin point of control right here. Right, so two things that kind of helped with a reversal. We took out some downside targets that probably needed to be retested. All right, so that was probably a bit more than a couple sentences about that. Also, if we just kind of move down my spreadsheet, the software names continue to be hot too. I mean, Shop was a name yesterday. Twilio was a big name yesterday. So a couple different software names pulled the cart. Salesforce had a big day today. Okta continues to be very strong. I think we've been talking about that name. ServiceNow announced a partnership with Microsoft, so that was probably a little bit of a catalyst for that name, up 2.2% today. But you could see these names are doing very well. I'm in TTD, had an okay day in it, but I'm patient, so no worries. Yeah, I mean, and in fact, today I did not do like a ton of trading today because I'm pretty set with the positions that I have. So, for me, it just wasn't a big day. I got into cyber last week, which had a nice day today. I think this cyber looks like it's might want to take that next leg higher. Let me go to the right chart here on the daily here. I would watch if it comes out of it's coiled, right? So if it comes out of this thing to the upside, 132.50, might be looking for that next leg higher. That would be really fun for my position that I'm in. Zillow, I got into last week, up 2% today. Some of these names are a little bit of a slow mover, but that's fine with me. I'll take 2%, any day. It's fine. Yeah, and the other thing with the software names is, we're still seeing, not just with software names, but just in general, a lot of M&A activity. Today it was what, Asia? I'm not even sure how to pronounce it. So there continues to be, I think, while interest rates are low as well, there continues to be a thirst in M&A targets. Symantec was the name the other day, so this is exciting for this. To hear about new deals, even if you're not in the deal itself, it's definitely, I think proving that there is a thirst and there's demand for, names that have a big stockpile of cash just to start taking some other names out. So that's one thing that I kind of came away with that I don't hear too many people talking about is that there's definitely, there's companies that are being scooped up right now, and some of them are not even leaders. I would say, just like Symantec, for example. So I think that's it. There was probably one or two other things. Oh, I was going to talk about the semi group. AMD very strong. We've been talking about this name, and Xilinx is another name in this group that I think also looks great. So why do I like this name? Well, it's above value. 114.52 is your support. So it broke out and then perfect retest of the top of value. And then if you look at it on a couple different time frames, hourly, it's now in value for the week, and it broke value on the 5 minute. So I like this. And going back to the daily chart, there's a VPOC up here at 129. So I like this name. And that's another thing is we keep finding more setups, more bullish setups. So I don't think there's any shortage of, geez, I can't, I'm not coming into the situation where I say, oh, geez, I can't find any setups right now. It's almost, it's almost like I'm finding too many setups, and you don't want to take every trade because, just like on Monday, and this morning, the market started down on the day. So just because I'm finding the setups doesn't mean I want to jump into every single stock. But Palo Alto looks pretty good. There's a VPOC up here. We talked about a trade that you can do in the room to take advantage of trying to get the price, maybe trying to get that VPOC. Nice little double bottom here, and rising RSI here. So it looks pretty good there. What was the final thing that I wanted to say today? I think just that, I'm just very pleased. And like I said, I wasn't very noisy on Twitter today, but you do the work. And I did put this out on my my regular Twitter feed. You could see the video that we put together this weekend. So this was on Saturday, and we put this together. These were all my watch list names, and we went over every single one of these as well as current positions. And you could see this list. So again, I didn't just put this out today. This was Saturday for members. And take a look at the list, right? I know a lot of people were talking about Chipotle yesterday and Roku yesterday. These were all on our watch list. And as always, I can't get into every single one of these because I already have a portfolio that I'm managing. But I think many of these names worked really well. Not every single one. Obviously, Cisco is on the list too, and they're the buyer of Asia, and they are down today. But I think you could see a lot of really good names that we came up with this weekend. All right, guys. So that's it. Thanks for watching. Have a great night. See you tomorrow.